a director. For more than 20 years, we've been telling stories about the environment, for better and for worse. Among the floods and earthquakes, garbage, toxic waste, polluted air, land and water, we've also encountered numerous strategies for change. The transition town approach has always seemed among the most interesting and original to us. We ventured to Totnes, the city celebrating its 10th anniversary of transition was like.
So people come to Totnes and they often say, well, we can't see very much. You know, we can see some signs in shop windows saying, we accept Totnes pounds. Or you can see solar panels on some roofs, or we can see incredible edible planters. We can't see much more than that. And so we always say to them, well, a lot of what we're doing is invisible. It's all about building relationships and enabling things to happen.
So maybe this is the interior transition that Jonathan Dawson, professor at Schumacher College in Dartington, was talking about. Dawson welcomed us to Totnes during the Transition Film Festival. And after a delightful dip into the 1960s onboard Audrey, the mobile cinema bus, we met Rob Hopkins, the pioneer of the transition movement.
I mean, because transition is something, it's not a single issue campaign. It's not like a Friends of the Earth campaign around plastic bags or something. You know, it's something where there is a food group and an education group and an energy group and a building group and an arts group. And so you bring what you're passionate about to the project. For me, in transition, we are very good, I think, now at making an economic case that transition is a form of economic development. It's a form of economic development that is better for the place where we live, better for climate, but it's also an economy that brings people closer together.
Yeah, sharing and working together and collaborating and cooperating and I guess finding the common ground, because I think that's the other big question for transition, is how do we reach the people who perhaps, you know, the environment and peak oil isn't their top priority. And it's how do we relate to those people and actually to have good food in your belly and to have a warm house and to have community. That's important to everybody. You know, show me anybody in the world anywhere where those three things aren't important. And so therefore we can always relate to people.
Holly Tiffin works at Grown in Totnes, a project to increase local food production. It started out as Incredible Edible, which cultivated community spaces, flower beds and green areas where anyone could freely harvest produce. Energy is the keystone to transition, for without energy, society stops, but the global urgency is a decarbonized economy. This was reconfirmed by the Paris Agreement in 2015. The result can be obtained with three elements: energy efficiency, production of renewable resources, and saving energy. Decarbonization is a territorial concern, and for this reason, local politics can be the most incisive. Thus, it is the communities that must take on the changeover, the transition, from an economy based on oil to one of local, sustainable, and resilient development.
A model for me is a forest. It's a fantastically sophisticated way of managing water and nutrients. So the water comes in through rain, through clouds, whatever. It's held in the leaves, it's held in the bark, in the moss, and then the soil is this amazing sophisticated sponge for how that works. If we designed forests like our economy works, we would have a kind of a guttering around the tree, and as soon as the water landed, it would go into a pipe down the tree, off and be taken away somewhere. Yeah? So at the moment we have an economy which is designed to draw money up to the wealthiest 1% or 0.1%. And actually what we need money to do is to cycle as many times within local economies as possible before it leaves. At the moment we have supermarkets and big businesses who are extracting money from our economy. They exist just to, like a vampire, to suck the money out of our economy. And I think one of the most important things we can do at this time is to put in place the ability for our communities to circulate money as much as possible. You know, that when we with energy, rather than just buying our energy from a massive company, maybe we have a locally owned energy company which as local people we can invest in, which is a safer place to invest than putting money in the bank. and then which works for the good of our community. If we are building housing in our community rather than it just being built by a massive construction company who just take all the profit out and take it away somewhere else and just build you something that you may or may not like. Actually, maybe as a community, we can design the houses, we can build the houses, we can own the houses, and we can then benefit. So that money then stays locally.
Today, there are about 2,000 transition entities throughout the world. When the From the Bottom initiative is accepted by the local government, the model becomes stronger. Small-scale economy is fostered by using comparable money that is only valid locally.
We've run the Totnes pound as an experiment here for a few years now. It's still in circulation. I still use it. Lots of people still use it. I wouldn't say the majority of people use it, and I think there are issues around scale. So if you go to Bristol, where they have the Bristol pound, they have the active support of their city council in Bristol. So in Bristol, you can pay your council tax, your business rates, you can buy bus tickets, train tickets, you can pay your energy bills using Bristol pounds. And in many cities, you can go and do all of your shopping for your family for a week using your plastic card, and you don't need to speak to anybody. And there was a great study in Bristol that showed that when people go shopping using Bristol pounds, they have like 20 more conversations than they would have if they go shopping just with a plastic card. Where sociologists say we have an epidemic of loneliness in this country, an epidemic of loneliness as just a side effect of our economy. I mean, that's awful.
Cultural tools are needed in order to imagine a different life, says Isabel Carlisle, an archaeologist who worked for years on sustainable educational programs in primary schools in London and Totnes. Projects have been cancelled by the Conservative government. However, in Totnes, a change workshop to help 20 to 35-year-olds design their futures continues. Transition is also an educational journey, an evolution that is personal and collective.
The role of Transition Town Totnes and its core workers has been shifting over the past 10 years. So the first 4 years were really about awareness raising and informality, and you could say that was the moment or the period through which Totnes itself began to learn. It became like a learning town, learning about things like people and economic contraction. And then the second 4 years were really about projects getting underway and getting started, and then different project groups forming and a lot of energy going into making things happen. And now we're, I think, in the third 4 years. So we're 2 years into the third 4 years. And the third 4 years are much more about turning outwards and thinking about what does this town really need. So we know there are things, this town needs social housing, it needs more employment, especially for young people.
Here now in England, one cannot discuss work or the economy without talking about Brexit.
So there are some people in transition who think Brexit is a good thing because it allows us to it allows us more possibility of creating local economies with less interference, and there are some people who think that's a disaster. I feel very strongly that Brexit is a complete disaster, because the obstacles to us doing transition never came from the European Union. The obstacles to us doing transition come from governments here, actually, and from powerful interests in this country. And actually Brexit, although it pretended to be about taking back control, all it's done is taking back control and giving it to very rich, powerful people in this country. It hasn't given any more control back to me or to anybody who lives in this town. It's given control to our government to sell our energy grid to Chinese companies, to get nuclear power stations built by French and Chinese companies. It's a disaster, because if we want to have a coherent response to climate change, then we have to be a united Europe.